Hi everyone and welcome back. I saved the best for the last as I'll be trying out what I believe is the nicest portable digital audio player that you can have below $1 grand. I've been using this one for about a month, maybe for a little bit more, due to its very easy to like tonality, very powerful headphone amplifier section, and of course super fast system on chip. Obviously I'm about the newest Shanling M6 Ultra that uses a brand new IEM silicon, brand new high precision op amps, which I'll be mentioning in a minute. It goes for $920 and it's time to check it out. Design-wise, it no longer goes with a wave-like pattern of their M7 and M9, and it goes with a more traditional look of their M8 and M6 family of products. As you can see, it's only by a hair smaller, so it's shorter by about 2 millimeters and it's thinner by about 1.5 millimeters. So it's just a little smaller, but it's lighter by about 50 grams, and you can actually feel that while holding them both in the hands. It has a glass panel obviously on its front with a very small chin right here. It has a glass, matte glass portion on its back, which is amazing because it will resist all scratches from your pocket, from your keys, which is amazing design decision. They made the same with their M7 and that makes me very happy. It has a fully machined aluminum case, obviously, so the build quality is very high with this one and I have nothing to complain about its build quality. It's just amazing. You cannot beat Shanling at their own game, and I believe that their game is ergonomics because it has buttons only one side, and that's just very easy to remember. So it has play, pause, next, previews buttons. You have a volume wheel right here on its right side, which also works as an on-off button. It has a lower resistance to, to other DAPs, and that might put off a few potential buyers, but that wasn't a big issue for me. I believe that it's perfectly fine as it is. 2 headphone jacks are being provided. One, it's a balanced one, so 4.4 millimeter balanced and 3.5 millimeter single-ended. They went with a 5-inch full HD screen, which is colorful, very bright. It has a very good contrast ratio and viewing angles. As you can see, it's very bright. It was more than enough for, using streaming apps as Qobuz, Tidal, Apple Music, so on. As for tech inside it, they went with a Snapdragon 665, which so far is pretty much the fastest system on chip you can find on any portable digital audio player. 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of ROM memory are being provided, which is not that much, but enough to save a few DSD albums, maybe a few high-resolution albums. But of course it has a micro SD card slot, so you can install a 1 terabyte card if you please. The biggest novelty is that this one uses 4 DAC chips, so not 1, not 2, but 4 DAC chips, and those are IEM 4493 SUQ, which was released this year. So this is a brand new silicon that provides 123 dB of dynamic range when used in stereo mode, and 128 dB when used in mono mode. And of course, for a fully balanced signal, you need 4 mono chips, and for that reason, it uses 4 DAC chips. 8 op amps are being used as well at its output stage and headphone amplifier section, and it provides about 720 milliwatts of power on its balanced output and 3 times less on its single-ended output. So if you want the best performance out of this one, just use its balanced connection for the best results. A full MQA decoder is on board, all possible wireless tech as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, all those fancy codecs as LDAC and aptX HD as well. It has a fairly large battery that will provide up to 13 hours on its regular jack and about 9 hours on its balanced output. This is pretty much it, and I believe is the right time to hit some eardrums. Sound-wise, even without any kind of burn-in, it was clear to me that I'm experiencing a very different digital audio player, something that I didn't experience as of yet this year in 2022. So if you want the warmest, the easiest to like, the smoothest sounding digital audio player, then I believe that M6 Ultra is pretty much that one. There's a sense of easiness while listening to this one, a full relaxation of body and spirit. And I believe that it works outstanding with real instruments, not only with electronica tunes. So I discarded all my IEMs and I went directly with my desktop headphones, and to my surprise it drove almost all of them, but these two worked just outstanding. HD800S, they need a gentle boost in terms of sub-bass delivery, they need a warmer mid-range, and they need a better control of that treble output. And of course, M6 Ultra worked as a magic pill for HD800S, because that bass was definitely more playful, more energetic, punchier sounding. The mid-range was definitely fuller bodied, weightier sounding as well. I could feel that those voices and piano keys had a longer trail, a longer decay, and just more life in them. And of course the treble output was gentler sounding in a way. And when I say gentle sounding, I don't mean in terms of transient response, because it was very punchy sounding and quite mean sounding in the bass. Just the overall tonality was gentler sounding, especially the treble output was smoother, more organic sounding, easier to like, easier to digest in a way. Then I moved directly to some IEMs, to ultra-sensitive IEMs, and I believe that those FIO FH7S are pretty much some of the best mid-range, mid-priced IEMs that I've heard as of late, but again they need a little bit of help, because that sub-bass is not so impactful compared to the original FH7, and that mid-bass is leaking over the mid-range, so you need a slightly stronger mid-range output, and again the treble output needs a little bit of a roll-off. And M6 Ultra, to no surprise, worked just outstanding with the FIO FH7S, just making them much more nicer sounding, easier to like, just outstanding sounding in my opinion. While sometimes I'm getting a love it or hate it relationship with new released DAPs, DTR1+. With this one, I felt, a love at first sight, or love at first listen to be more exact, because there's no way you'll be disliking this one tonality-wise. And if I'm taking everything into consideration, so price, performance, sound tonality, then it will easily fight with much pricier DAPs any time of the day. Shanling aren't always mentioning the noise floor of their devices, but we got an exception with this one, waiving a super low noise floor of 1.6 microvolts, so pretty much in line with their M7 and M9 portable digital audio players, which are considerably more expensive. And since this one was pretty much dead silent with my entire IEM collection, we should expect a similar performance with this one. And it did, so there is no point in telling you a lot more. It was simply dead silent with everything, at any load, any volume position, gain position, even max power, balanced output, high gain. It was pretty much noiseless with everything, instantly making it a best friend for your entire IEM collection. Moving on to power output, while it has only 720 milliwatts of power, in real-life scenarios, that was more than enough with all my IEMs, portable over-ears and desktop headphones. With IEMs, I was only at low gain. I never moved to mid-gain or high gain, because power-wise there was more than enough. It was not limiting dynamics, so for me, low gain worked just outstanding. With desktop dynamic driver headphones, except for these ones, like Apos Caspian, like Kineton Valley, like RZH Mania, I moved to mid-gain, and again it was not limiting dynamics, it was not shelving all those sounds inside my head, so it was still quite open, quite layered sounding. It was amazing sounding with all those headphones. And with bigger headphones, I moved to high gain, like these ones, and I was approaching maybe 75, maximum 80 out of 100 volume-wise, so there was still plenty of power remaining on top. It worked great with some of them, but not outstanding with all of them. So it sounded more like a mid-sized or small-sized desktop setup, and it sounded like a high-end portable digital audio player. Dynamics were impressive with most headphones, but several planar magnetics were not so punchy, not so alive. For example, Odyssey LCD4, they need more current to be well driven, and I felt that they didn't sound so punchy and alive with this one. But something like Kineton Drogner didn't have that issue. I find them quite punchy, alive. engaging sounding, so it really depends on the headphones. Regardless of the headphones, I was still not touching its upper power limits, which was impressive to say the least. One of the nicest things to say about the M6 Ultra, something that I felt right away, was its very spacious, very holographic type of sound. And instead of being just wide or tall sounding, it was much deeper sounding compared to the units that I reviewed this week and last week. It was always trying to push all those sounds outside my head for an out-of-head experience. And that was felt not only with open back headphones, but also with closed back headphones, with IEMs as well. Infected Mushroom just released a new album. Please check it out. It's amazing sounding. You can find it on all streaming platforms. So I grabbed those HD800S, I connected them on the balanced output, and I was not surprised at all by being wrapped by a blanket of sounds. And that felt not only with the first track, but with all tracks from this album. And I believe that this duo worked just outstanding, just always trying to push those sounds outside for a holographic experience. It sounded more like binaural than stereo music in a way. And I believe that this combo worked great, much better compared to Fire M11S and Hebe RS2. The bass was more playful, punchier sounding, the mid-range was heavier, it was denser, meatier sounding as well, and the treble output was better controlled. The sound was breathing and there was enough air in between the notes, and I do believe that its tonality was pretty much spot on. On its balanced output, you have a much lower channel crosstalk, a much higher power output, of course, a much higher headroom, and that works as a soundstage booster with all headphones, no exception really. And if you want the best it has to offer, then its balanced output becomes mandatory. Moving on to transients, or how fast and how impactful it can sound, I'm reminding you that it has 4 DAC chips, so it has 4 signal paths. It has 8 op-amps, so 2 op-amps per channel. It has a much wider signal path compared to a regular size DAP. It has more components to a regular size DAP, and of course all that led to a much punchier, more engaging type of sound compared to everything that Fio or Hebe does below 1 grand. So this is very punchy, mean sounding in the bass. You can feel that immediately with everything, not only with desktop headphones, with IEMs as well. I felt it just more engaging, more live sounding compared to those Fio and Hebe below 1 grand. When it comes to speed, it's good, it's great, but not exactly world best. I believe that Fio M17 is still faster. That one is just lightning fast. I find it very similar sounding in terms of speed and impact to a Shanling M7, which is costlier, and of course that comes as a complement to the little M6 Ultra. I won't be comparing this one with the units that I reviewed this week and last week, because to me M6 Ultra is faster and more impactful sounding to the Hebe RS2 and Fio M11S. When it comes to detail retrieval, or how much information it can retrieve from the original lossless files, again, it has 4 DAC chips for a reason, because they can squeeze a higher dynamic range of 128 dB versus 123 in stereo mode. Of course, all those combined op-amps and everything, it doesn't have really a signal-to-noise ratio or dynamic range of 128, but still, I do believe it's very clean, very detailed sounding, very transparent sounding. It's not that far off compared to something like Shanling M7 or Shanling M8. One is using ES9038 Pro, one AK4499, because spec-wise, those DAC chips in mono mode are not that far off compared to upper-class DAC chips. So it's clean, it's detailed, I didn't have a problem spotting all those small nuances, and it will easily feel on the same level with units costing in between 1 and 2 grand. While listening to Labyrinth by Sonar, that bass guitar was echoing through this track, it was traveling a much longer distance, but still it was so raw, so defined and so powerful. All surrounded by an airy, almost ethereal drum performance. And rarely I can recommend a rock or metal album, but this is an exception. And if you are into progressive rock or metal, please give it a try. An amazing sounding album. And I believe that M6 Ultra was providing everything that I needed to immerse myself into this album. Moving on to frequency response, M6 Ultra will impress you right away with a rumbling, deep reaching, very powerful bass, very similar to that of the Shanling M7 and M8, both of which are more expensive. So I believe that the family resemblance is very powerful in here because I believe all Shanling devices are quite full-bodied and warm sounding, and this one is no different, going with the same winning formula. It will be shaking your head pretty nicely with bass-intensive music. It will be sending some tremors in the sub-bass. While I'm not a bass head by any means, I really like when bass notes are appearing in the most unusual places, and I do believe that M6 will be doing that so very often. Its mid-range, it's also on a fuller and warmer side of neutral, so this is not a neutral sounding player like a Fire M17. It's definitely fuller bodied, warmer, denser, meatier sounding in the mid-range, and of course that worked amazing with V-shaped sounding headphones like Sennheiser HD800S. These ones were just rocking much harder with rock and metal tunes. Usually I'm not listening to this one with such musical genres, but I've got an exception with Shanling M6 Ultra, which just infused more life into them and making that treble much easier to swallow. I can describe its treble output as clean and defined, but without becoming tiresome. And while I can describe many DAPs with the same words, I believe that M6 Ultra goes one step further and becomes smooth, gentle, and quite relaxing sounding in the treble. There is that velvety texture that several but not all IEM-based players are known for, and in this regard, I believe that this is the most velvety sounding player that I've heard this year. As for my conclusions, M6 Ultra slowly but surely became my #1 portable digital audio player below $1,000. I can nitpick a little about its resolution and speed, which was not up there with some of the best units that I tried, but make no mistake, everything else was really up there with some of the best units that I tried. This is still a noiseless, powerful, and also silky smooth sounding portable digital audio player that always tries to remind me why listening to music in the first place. This is a very emotional and mood-lifting sounding DAP, and for all of the reasons combined, I believe that it fully deserved my highest praise and award, Gold Award. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as usual, listen to more tunes, be positive, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!